and welcome to Talking TSM, the Gamehouse's talk show about TSM's LCS team. I'm Robert Haynes, your host and your guide into the world of TSM's LCS team. And I am back. I know I had those two, previously recorded episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed them. But I have returned, and I'm still fighting off a cold that I picked up while there. One of the people that we were staying with got sick on the last day. We all thought that we were good, and then lo and behold, 2 or 3 days later, we were not. So, this has been my last couple of days. Not feeling great, unfortunately, even to the point where I missed a celebration for me. I had to cancel it, which was disappointing, to say the least, for my birthday, by the way. That's coming up here relatively soon. So, that was it's been a weird week back. I've been back now since, was it only just Monday? Yeah, Monday. So I've been back for less than a week now. I've been, trying to catch up on everything. Been watching MSI. We're going to talk about that for a few minutes. Just kind of catch up on that. We're going to talk about all the news that came out about TSM, their internal investigation. And I kind of want to talk about how, this is playing into, I think, I don't know. We'll talk about the past ownership and future ownership, or leadership, I should say. Kind of my thoughts on that. Then TSM launched a new website, which is an interesting change. So, let's dive into it here. MSI was interesting, I guess. For the longest time, it had felt like, the West was making up some ground. And then RNG and T1 were just mostly, T1 had a bit of a faltering when they lost to EG. But otherwise, both teams were very clearly the top two, I think. I think G2 at one point looked like they were the best team there, and then they went on their weird losing streak and looked absolutely atrocious versus T1. I mean, truly just those games were not good. Not good at all. So, which was unfortunate. I was hoping one of the two Western teams would have a chance. And funny enough, the arguments between EU and NA are always funny, right? NA was, EG were able to beat T1, which was pretty amazing. I think they looked really good in their series against RNG as well. I know it was a 3-0, but if you actually watch the games, Game 1 was a blowout, but Games 2 and 3 were very, very, very winnable for EG. And I think that team really made a name for themselves. Vulcan played, I think, really under the radar well. I think Impact had a pretty bad series. Bin was just a monster the entire tournament. And excuse me, the young core of Evil Geniuses with Inspired, Jojo Pyun, and Danny. Jojo Pyun and Inspired specifically looked amazing, especially versus RNG, but through the latter half of the tournament. Danny was a little underwhelming. I'm not going to lie. It felt like he was getting bodied in some areas and that his positioning was a little off in team fights, which is rare for him, right? He's more known for struggling in lane than he is in actual team fights and objective control. But, man, some of the plays Jojo Pyun made, holy moly. That kid is... And I feel fine saying kid because he's only 17 this time, but he is something special. I mean, goodness. It is hard to, I think, understate just how talented Jojo Pyun is and will become. He could already argue. You could already argue that he's very easily top 3 in the LCS. You could probably say he's number 2, maybe behind Bjerg. I think that I feel pretty comfortable saying that, even with people like Jensen and Maple coming in. Now, he still has a lot to learn, and I think there are matchups that he's, once he's played them a bunch, he's going to be great. But, can you imagine 10 years down the road that this guy doesn't have at least 2 or 3 LCS championships under his belt? I would argue probably likely more. And maybe he even helps NA win some sort of international something or other, or at least go far. I think MSI would be more likely than Worlds, but he gives you hope. The fact that he was able to go toe to toe with Faker, Xiaohu, that he is going to, and Caps, that he is going to learn from facing. I would argue that those are at least 3 of the top 5 to 10 minimum mid laners in the world. The combination of them, obviously, I would argue at least Xiaohu and Caps, or not Caps, Xiaohu and Faker are top 5. I'm sure somebody would argue differently for Caps, but I think he, outside of his bit of struggles, these last the last few games, that he had played mostly really well in MSI and was kind of the catalyst to help G2 get to MSI at all. So I just have this feeling Jojo Pion is going to come back, and yeah, he probably will be a little burnt out. Luckily they'll get. I think we start on June 11th. Yeah, that seems about right. So we're what, they're going to get a full week, maybe 2 weeks off technically, kind of. They'll be traveling back. If I'm EG, at least I take this weekend, next week off, because until the games start, because who cares, right? In terms of when I say who cares, I mean who cares in terms of who is being played, right? They should be better than whoever they're playing against. I don't think the schedule's been released yet. I expect that to come out next week. Should be a busy week for the esports side of League of Legends next week. But I cannot emphasize how good EG looked compared to my expectations for them. A 9-9 team that won a championship, that made a very, a strong impression at MSI. They didn't lose to a single minor region team, I don't think, once. I'd have to look back again and check. Actually, you know what? Don't quote me on that. I'm looking now. That was bad. I just put myself out there. I'm like Amber Heard. I just put something into the ether that I probably shouldn't have. Maybe that's a bad joke, but she did, putting out that Kate Moss statement was a big mistake on her part. Did not help her. Okay, yeah, no, they didn't. They did not. They beat Order 4 times, which is, bless up that Order was there. And then, they were able to get, go 2-0 against PSG and Saigon Buffalo. So, and then their other win was randomly against T1. So crazy, isn't it? This team is good. They're really talented. And Impact is normally a lot better than this. It just felt like he was just off, I think some of the champions maybe aren't his bread and butter necessarily. Like, they're good and he's good on them, but he likes to play the tankier boys more often. And we saw him play a lot better, and the team played a lot better when he was on things like Ornn. So not saying that he can't play the other stuff. It's just that, when you want him at his best, that's some of his most popular and most important picks were not in the meta at the moment. Although I think they might be when we head into the LCS, which is going to make this team just even more substantially terrifying. Spoiler alert, I am likely going to put them as number 1 in my power rankings. I'm trying to fight with who else I could put there. But yeah, I mean, going into it, you just have to put them at one. They beat T1. I don't know that any other team in the LCS right now beats T1 even when T1's on a bad day, the way that EG did. It's and I should be proud. I mean, genuinely. I mean, this team represented well. I mean, yeah, I can't really complain about how well that they played. I mean, they continued to get better game over game, week over week. Um, to that to that point, to that inflection point of when they did take down Faker in T1. I mean, that's something that Jojo Pyun will never forget for the rest of his life as a mid laner, that he was able to win a game regardless of his play, right? But which he played well, but like regardless of his play, he was able to beat T1. So, I know this isn't an EG podcast. You know, I just feel like, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinions of this in the comments below, but I always support the NA and the EU teams. At Worlds, it's not always us, but I just want one of them to win something big here in the next couple of years. I just really do, and it's what gets me excited when we go there. And for so many years, especially in the last few, I've really been worried that NA is just so far behind. And then you watch them go 0-4 to G2, and every game looked closer, but it was still not exactly what we're wanting. But man, once they got into that Rumble stage, it was a very different Evil Geniuses. I mean, those PSG Talon games and the Saigon Buffalo games weren't all that close. They had a close one with RNG. They had a close one with G2, and then they took the one off of T1. I mean, those are three of the best teams in the world theoretically, and I say theoretically. I think there are a couple LPL and LCK teams that might have something to say about that. But you could rank EG in the top 10 maybe in the world, and I don't think people would be too upset considering how well they played. So good on them. It was really cool to see. And then, spoiler alert, if you have not watched what happened in the finals, I'm going to talk about that for just 2 seconds. Please be aware, I'm giving you plenty of time right now. I'm wasting time. I'm just spending this extra time to give you that extra time so that you don't miss and accidentally hear what happened in the finals, as it by the time that this episode comes out, it will have only happened 24 hours before then. So, last spoiler alert. Okay. You've been spoiler alerted enough. RNG were able to take T1 down 3-2 in what was a very anticlimactic Game 5, unfortunately, because the other games, there were 2 blowouts. They were both by RNG, really. I think Game 2 was a pretty strong T1 game as well, but Games 3 and 4 were certainly fun, back and forth. You could see both of these teams, potentially this being a warm-up game, a warm-up series for them, for Worlds. What is really, really funny to a certain degree about this was RNG, there's a lot of people who are like, they shouldn't have even been there, which I think that argument can certainly have been made, because when you're watching, what's going on in Busan, right? They got all the confetti and everything coming down around where they should have been playing, and it's just kind of ironic because it's like, it's a story of when we look back, we'll be like, oh yeah, that was mid COVID times, because we're still in the midst of it. It's getting better, that's for sure, but yeah, I mean, it's just, they had fans there finally, and they're all there to cheer on T1. It's in South Korea. It's in Busan, and and then Yeah, the team from China who's not allowed to come. Not to no fault of their own, obviously. I'm sure they would have liked to have been there, but they couldn't. And a lot of people said that Riot shouldn't have made an exception for them, similar to how they didn't with Vietnam, which, I find that to be a very fair argument, if I'm being honest. But I know other people may not feel that way, and that's fine. There's clear bias towards China, and they also, the one thing people have to understand is, yes, this is a business. Yes, they have, Riot Games has obligations to China, but more importantly, and I think the thing that people forget the most is China is also by far the biggest viewership of League of Legends. It's really not very close. So, if you're saying that, yeah, we're not going to have the team of the most, the most popular team there outside of T1. T1, I think, is, they are, I think they permeate all boundaries and borders as a team. I mean, I was certainly rooting for T1 against RNG. Not going to deny that whatsoever. So, yeah, it was really interesting and funny to watch because even the players were like, they weren't even, like, Faker was the only one that seemed kind of mad. The rest of them were kind of just seemingly laughing about the confetti coming down, which I also found to be interesting. But they were good games. Faker had his pop-off moment. Gumayushi looked really solid. Owner struggled a bit. Wei was out of his mind. Zhao, who played really well. Ben was also out of his mind. Gala had some pop-up moments. The biggest oof that I have is the T1 coaching staff and the team deciding to put Keria on Yuumi. On Yuumi for Game 5. What are we doing here, fam? This is probably the best freaking support in the world. And very young. If you guys remember, I think it was, 2 years ago? Maybe a year ago? Can't remember now. It was a year ago. I don't know. Whatever. I wanted TSM to sign Keria. I was like, yeah, go get Keria. This guy's a beast, Imagine if TSM had signed Keria. He would never have become the best support in the world, most likely. God, I'm so self-deprecating today for our team. I love TSM, I promise, guys. I love them. But it is funny, though, because, Keria was available, and I know they went after him. Obviously, it didn't happen. But, yeah, this decision to put him on the Yuumi was just odd and confusing, and I don't know. It just felt like a waste. Like, Yumi's a good champion, don't get me wrong, but it's not a very skill-intensive champion. I would almost argue that, especially in a Game 5, when you want, your players to be able to, find the best opportunities to be successful, right? You're going to put them on champions and in situations where they can shine. Putting him on Yuumi was just never going to happen. Yuumi makes a great play with their ult. Oh, wait, that's totally determinate based off of who they're on, what champion they're supporting at that second. Oh, Yuumi gets the extra heal. Oh, they hit the random Q a little bit, great damage. At the pro level, Yuumi is a great champion and a good support, but for a player that thrives off of engagement and decision making, and I think the ability to outplay, Yuumi gives you almost none of that. So it was not the main reason T1 lost, but it felt like a very prominent and unexpected decision that definitely affected the game in a pretty substantial way, if you ask me. So, yeah, it was interesting. But, RNG get their third MSI title. They're the first team to ever do that, which is pretty cool. Good for them. Now all the teams head home. Hopefully get themselves a little break, and then they get ready for the rest of the year. Get ready to start prepping for Worlds, which will be awesome. Very exciting. I know I'm not maybe sounding like it. It's just the voice. The sickness in the voice. Now we got to get to the not as fun parts. So, how do we want to do this here? So, for those of you who don't know, they finally released what was going on with the allegations and everything behind Andy Reginald Din, and the harassment and abuse allegations that were charged towards him. I'm going to preface this by stating I am not a lawyer. That my opinions of this can be taken with a grain of salt. I am not necessarily somebody who is extraordinarily well versed in these things, but I do think it is important to discuss. So I'm going to try to read mostly from these and just tell you guys some of the highlights that I had found from this investigation. Because if you forget, the catalyst for this was just this past year, where Doublelift claimed that Andy was an abuser, harasser, all that stuff, and so they released the documents. Now I wanted to be clear, this was an excuse me, goodness, whew. Apologies, got a tickle in my throat there. This was an internal investigation. Okay. This one, I do not believe that this is the Riot official one. I believe that this is the board of directors of Swift Media Entertainment that were checking into this and hired a company to look into it. Now, here's what I'm going to say, just based on what I've seen previously and how I have seen others, traditional sports teams and everything else working this way. It is very rare, if I think ever, that a team, an organization, a company even, has hired a third-party company or lawyer group that they anticipate is going to find something extraordinarily wrong with them. They are going to, find one that is going to make it seem like they really did try, that they asked like a lot of people about certain things, and that there were some people who certainly dissented, and then there were others who were intensely supporting of the group, right, who didn't feel like anything had happened wrong or had been wrong. At least in my experience, maybe this is just me being jaded with the legal system and other aspects of it, but it is very interesting to note that the findings of this were very inconclusive. I don't know. It didn't seem very... I don't know. They make it seem conclusive, but it feels very... I mean, I'll just come out and say it. It feels very staged to a certain degree. And I think that that's kind of the way these things go. That's not to say that maybe some of it's not true, but, yeah. So here, I'll read through this, at least a little bit. While an outside investigator was being retained, a former player for TSM made public comments regarding the alleged mistreatment of players and other TSM employees by Andy Din. This former player, likely, I'm pretty sure, being Doublelift, although there are rumors that Acadian had problems with Andy as well, so maybe they're referring to Acadian. I doubt it, though. Among these things, that Mr. Din abused and harassed players and other employees, and that the work and team environment at TSM was toxic as a result of Mr. Din's conduct. The employee then went public on various social media outlets about the complaints. Shortly after these public comments, Riot Games informed TSM and Mr. Din that it had opened a separate investigation into Mr. Din's conduct. Our investigation was separate from Riot Games' investigation, although we coordinated with Riot's investigators regarding interviews of current Swift employees. So there is crossover with TSM and Riot Games in terms of what they are looking into. What I find to be, even still to this day, the most almost hysterical and just clown buffoonery of this whole thing is that the player making these allegations is dating the CEO's former girlfriend, and not only that, but somebody who is unbelievably high up the ladder, well, was unbelievably high up the ladder at TSM. There's no way that she didn't know or do, or have influence in some of these things that were happening. So he's like basically tattletaling on her too. Unless if she just, I had my hands clean of all of it. I was there. I had to, to be a part of it. It's just like all these things I just find are so, I don't know, disappointing might be the word. Because, again, like, maybe Lena's a really good person. I feel like I'm constantly, crapping on her, which is, I don't know. I don't want it to seem like I have any vendetta against her or anything. I mean, I really liked her up until recently. Honestly, I just am just shocked. I'm pretty sure I even was on this podcast supporting her and Doublelift. Like, I thought it was kind of weird that they were together, but it is clear that, there had to be some feelings as to why he came back to TSM, and her being a part of it, there's no doubt had at least some impact on it. But I'm pretty sure defending them. And now it's just like, it's just so very confusing as to how some of this is being allowed without it being more of a problem. I don't know. Anyways, investigator and attorney Lynn Davis conducted the investigation. She was empowered by the subcommittee to conduct her investigation without any limitations. Okay. We'll see about that. She reached out to 39 witnesses and interviewed 31 current and past employees of Swift Companies, TSM Blitz, and Icon, including all direct reports to Mr. Din and all members of the current League of Legends team. So Speakhead would really be the only one that would have had any real interaction with Andy since then. So you can take, well, I guess Hooney too. Speak of more than Hooney, I'm sure. But, you could theoretically take 3, depending on how much of the current League of Legends team. I mean, Chawi, Shinyi, Kaiduo, Tactical, I guess, was a part of it. But, he was on the Academy squad, so I doubt Andy was really going down there yelling at the Academy team. Kaze is kind of in that, like, group that really likes Andy, so I don't know, you're taking maybe 6-7 of these witnesses at a minimum who don't know him or haven't really interacted with him probably all that much. Find that to be interesting. And don't worry, this investigation part is very short. We're going to get to our boy Peter Zhang here later. That's going to be almost more interesting, and it's funny that they released these two things at the same time. They are really using Peter Zhang as a scapegoat, deservedly so, but holy moly, they are just trying to push all the attention onto him. It's a smart move. It's a really smart move by Andy to do that, I think, honestly. Just smart by him or his lawyers or both. I don't know which one. Sorry. I'm trying not to sneeze here, guys. Okay. The investigation revealed that there was no unlawful conduct by Mr. Din. None of the witnesses interviewed had witnessed or were aware of conduct or derogatory comments aimed at or based on any protected characteristics, i.e. gender, race, religion, sexual orientation. Now, people were wondering why, when Regi put this out there specifically, he stated, like, there's no sexual, like, harassment or anything like that. And people are like, well, that's not what they were looking for. Well, they checked it all. They went through gender, race, religion, sexual orientation. Now, I will say I feel like Biofrost would have come out and stated if Andy had done anything necessarily, specifically, now that he has come out as gay. maybe he doesn't feel that way yet. I'm sure they asked Biofrost, like of the former players and stuff. Bio was on all these major teams for TSM. I'd have to think that they would have interviewed him. Maybe he's one of the few people that did say that he had said something, but if there's nothing on sexual orientation specifically, right, then that's good. I mean that's good. It just feels like at this point Andy's just being an asshole, genuinely. But we'll see. Specifically and of particular note, given the male-dominated esports industry, all females interviewed did not feel that they were marginalized and or that gender prohibited advancement within Swift. Good on TSM. Honestly, I know we're looking at other stuff that Andy's done wrong, but it's good to note that they are not discriminating or marginalizing. That's huge. It's good. This confirms that, essentially. Again, this is an internal investigation, but to be fair, they didn't have to put that. Especially if it was going to be a problem, right? There was also no conduct observed in the workplace that was sexual in nature. In some, there was no sexual harassment or gender discrimination. The investigation did reveal that Mr. Din provided feedback to employees, including players, in an aggressive and harsh tone. Mr. Din admitted that he had delivered feedback in a frustrated tone when deliverables were not met, and that well, they messed that up. Okay. His frustrated tone may not be the most productive way to convey his feedback. 3 witnesses, 2 past employees, so people who don't work there anymore, so who are not under him in any way, said they heard Mr. Din call employees names such as stupid, trash, or worthless. All others, okay, so people who do work there, it would seem like, said that when Mr. Din used these words, he was referring to work product and not calling the employees stupid, trash, or worthless. No other words, such as F-word or swearing, were mentioned. I mean, F-bombs and stuff are dropped constantly in video games. I don't know why that would matter, but whatever, that's fine. There were 6 employees, 4 past and 2 current, of the 31 witnesses interviewed who characterized Mr. Din's conduct as being a bully and creating a culture of fear. The remaining 25 employees interviewed did not feel that they were working in a culture of fear or toxic workplace. There was 1 report of an employee crying as a result of Mr. Din's conduct. Then they talk about how he's got to take a bunch of training and stuff. Here's my initial thing here is I doubt that the internal investigation, specifically, regardless of them working with Riot Games, was ever going to come to any other conclusion other than this. That's just my personal take on this. I understand, that maybe I'm a little biased in this situation because, I think Andy is a very passionate, clearly, competitive, clearly, and has a bit of toxicity on it in terms of, the way that he does everything. But, he's a toxic gamer. I mean, it's not an excuse, by the way. I mean, that's who he is. It's very obvious. And, the fact that he is still using that in the workplace is what's unexcusable, right? That mentality, that mindset. I don't know what they expected. I mean, and of course, the majority of the people who are not there would characterize him as a bully. They probably left because of that. And they're like, oh, well, only 2 employees did this or that. So, sorry, guys. Give me 1 second here. All right. Continuing on here. So, and then there was a report of 1 employee crying as a result of Mr. Din's conduct. I don't know. It's really tough. Like, at least in that regard. I 100% believe that he was extremely over the top. I don't doubt that whatsoever. And I believe that he would push somebody to cry, which is, I'm sure a very appropriate way to react to, somebody like him just screaming and yelling at you. So, that being said, the small bit that I will defend Andy with, to the very smallest, is if people are consistently not getting things done or doing things in a way that's going to help the company, then that is absolutely deserving of being frustrated. And especially with the league team not consistently performing the way that he wanted to, with players, I'm sure, not working as hard as he would like them to in certain areas, which, I mean, we've seen in the last couple of years. Even when Bjergsen, again, has more solo queue games than his entire team as a coach, that's not ideal. And stuff like that. I'm very sure that his expectations were not being met. And that frustration set in. Totally fine. I get that part of it. It's the way you deal with the frustration. And that clearly has come home to roost. And I've always heard that he was, as I stated before, an asshole. So, and that is fine. I mean, you need like really intense people sometimes to lead to a certain degree, but it's understanding of, how and when to push these buttons, what to say, and necessarily, I would guess I would say how to act as the boss, right? That requires, I don't know, some self-reflection from him, which is apparently that's at least what he's doing. I don't know. It feels like, TSM are hoping that this will be it. This will be the end of it, and that, Riot Games won't bring anything harsher down upon him. I don't know really what they can do other than, because everyone's like, Riot Games can do something. They're not going to kick TSM out as much as these, fans of other teams would love for TSM to no longer exist in the LCS. TSM is still the biggest franchise in the entire region. It's inconceivable that he has done enough for TSM to be kicked out of the LCS. Regardless of how the other owners may feel about him, I'm sure that they would agree because, let's say Jack just has a really bad month and he's just screaming at everybody and cussing people out, and then the reports come out, and then, C9's gone too. Right? That's not the precedent that you want to set, especially with somebody who's not directly involved with the league team anymore. He's an owner. He needs to be, if anything, which I would agree with this completely, is they find the heck out of him, of the team specifically, and, you basically tell him don't do it again. And, it's really based on the company to make these decisions. It's a little different than traditional sports where the owners of each team own just the one team. So everything that is decided, is very detrimental or helpful to the league, the team as a whole. When you make a decision for the LCS, right, Andy, and I'm surprised they only looked at the League of Legends team. They should have, in my opinion, looked at all the other teams as well, to really get, I think, a better scope. But it seems like, his league was the first game. So clearly that's the one that he's getting the most upset about. I'm sure he has wanted a world's title, or at least world success to some degree, in these last 10 years. And it's been frustrating that they haven't done it. So, I guess my conclusion is he's absolutely a bully. He's definitely seems to be a bit of an asshole and probably somebody who's hard to work with. That being said, if they found, and if nobody, especially, I'm sure they probably even asked Doublelift, if even he is saying, like, no, it was never about race, religion, sexual orientation, he never was going around sexually harassing people, then to the extent of breaking the law, he did not do that. He just seems like he might be a toxic person. Not might be, is likely a toxic person to work under. And in all reality, guys, there's just not a whole lot that a governing organization can do about just somebody being extraordinarily over the top, rude, and aggressive. I'm not trying to like marginalize or minimize what these people felt, because I'm sure it was terrifying in the moment. I've had plenty of those moments in my life as well with people who have higher power than I do, and I think the power structure is the problem. I think if Andy's intelligent, he's going to step outside of his board of directors and the people who directly report to him. He needs to just stay out. And he needs to stay out of the public eye for a while. Like, I wouldn't even stream or anything. I wouldn't, not that he does really, but you know what I mean. I wouldn't tweet, nothing. I'd just stay out for a year, maybe 2. Let this all blow over, and, we'll see what happens. Clearly things are changing at TSM, though, because then we go into this report with Peter Zhang. Holy moly. I really thought Peter was a good guy. I mean, I said beginning of the year, man, I would love for him to, he got this promotion. I'd love for him to be one of their guys. He was one of the guys, but not for them, not for TSM. He was one of the guys for some players and an agency in China. TSM now, so I guess we'll stay here that there were allegations of conflict of interest and financial irregularities. This is according to a Dexerto.com article by Richard Lewis. TSM now claim that it has been confirmed that Zhang diverted player salaries and withheld owed money amounting to over $300,000 following an internal investigation. Oh my God. I mean, the claims were that Zhang was siphoning off money from player salaries for himself, as well as acting as a conduit for financial transfers between players and unspecified entities back in their native China. This is in addition to the money that he kept for the sale of an $80,000 car for Sword Art when he left the team. I just... Here, I'll get... This is what the investigation found, okay? Diverted approximately $250,000 in salary payments from 2 TSM players to himself and third parties, okay? Mr. Zhang agreed to sell the car. Car was sold for $80,000. Only after the player threatened to report Mr. Zhang to the authorities did he receive a portion of the funds, roughly $35,000. To date, the $45,000 balance remains unpaid. Mr. Zhang attempted to borrow money from 8 TSM players and staff members, including players over whom he had managerial responsibility. He claimed these funds were needed to pay for, among other things, his grandmother's medical treatment in China. Mr. Zhang attempted to solicit the amounts of $1,500 to approximately $22,000 per player. 2 players lent Mr. Zhang a total of approximately $15,000, of which Mr. Zhang has since repaid approximately $10,500. The company became aware of Mr. Zhang's solicitation for loans around March 18th, 2022, so we're only 2 months out from this. Took immediate action to stop the money from being lent to Mr. Zhang, including reversing several scheduled wire transfers. The company's prompt response prevented approximately $54,000 from being sent. To date, approximately $4,500 remains unreturned by Mr. Zhang. Now, that last part, it's like, oh, that doesn't sound that bad. It does sound like he's kind of been paying people back, but then they go into the fact that his relationship with the former head coach of Victory 5, Wang Hanyu, is now working as a talent agent in China and represents 2 of the players that were acquired by TSM and is claimed to, through Zhang as a proxy, take financial reimbursement if he was able to place them on the TSM roster. The payments were said to be distributed across 17 bank accounts, one of which belonged to Zhang and the other one to Hanyu. As a result, the vast majority of the players' salary payments between December 21st and February 2022, including their large upfront payments, were diverted to bank accounts not affiliated with the players, of which one was owned by Mr. Zhang and the other was owned by Han Yu. Mr. Han Yu. So they're not able to like necessarily conclude anything. Here we go. While we do not have conclusive evidence of this issue, Mr. Zhang's involvement in the TSM recruitment process, his close relationship with Han Yi, it says here now. Oh, Han Yi, the player. Okay, that was his player name, I guess. And the fact that Mr. Zhang has since acted as an intermediary for the players' commission payments to Han Yi suggests that Mr. Zhang may have shared the draft TSM agreement and other related non-public information with Han Yi, potentially in exchange for personal benefit. Now, it looks like they did a good job covering up their trails, but this sounds to me, this is total conjecture. It's total just me connecting the dots maybe and finding something that may not be there. This sounds to me almost like Peter Zhang had like a massive gambling debt or something, or that Han Yi, whoever this Victory 5 head coach was, like got him in on this scheme and like, you know, turned him to the dark side or something, because, you know, Peter's worked for this team for a while and none of this happened until much more lately. And he and Parth were the ones who wanted to go to China to find these new players. This is absolutely whack. And I'm sure TSM have helped, you know, repay these other things. But, you know, and oh, by the way, they've been trying to reach out to Peter and he didn't cooperate with the investigation. He says that he couldn't be reached and that he needs to seek legal counsel before he'll investigate, but then that he would. They believe that it's pretty unlikely that he's going to, and they can't really do anything now that he's in China. Man, this is like a movie or something, you know, like some heist movie or something. I mean, it's crazy to me that, first off, he thought he could get away with this. Secondly, I mean, he made it so obvious. He's going around asking these other players for money. Like, come on, man. What are you doing? I'm so disappointed. I am just so disappointed because I really put a lot of stock into Peter Zhang. He seemed to be so good. The players seem to love him. And he goes and he does this. And I get it. Like, you know, part of it was that, you know, this Han Yi guy apparently is talking about, you know, the fact that, like, he was taking a commission, which makes sense. I mean, if it's in their contract, that's fine. You know, but Peter taking the bait like this and just, I don't know, just putting himself in such a terrible position. And maybe it was for his grandma's medical bills. You know, maybe his family's really poor outside of him, and they were putting a lot of pressure on him, and he came up with this solution as a possibility to help to keep his grandma alive. I would love for that to be the case, because then at least it's like, yeah, you're screwing over a lot of other people, but you're doing it for the love of your grandma, I guess, you know. I don't know. I mean, and these players trusted him. These players and staff members. No, it's clear that he was paying some of this back. I don't know what he was doing with the whole sword art thing. That is crazy to me. That is really nuts to me that sword art was, you know, able to do all this stuff, or that was able to sell his car and didn't. I mean, he didn't do anything about it for like a couple months, but dude, just such a sad situation for a guy who I really thought was important to this organization's future, and now he's gonna disappear. This will probably be the last time we ever hear of Peter Zhang. I would be shocked if he even gets another job as a coach. I really would be. So, I don't know. We will have to see, but this stuff is nuts. And it's very clear to me that he has broken at least American laws. I don't know if these are illegal in China, but it seems like he definitely almost extorted players to a certain degree, regardless of if paying them back. And if nothing else, he put himself in a compromised position to, I mean, it hurts. I mean, TSM could sue him just for hurting their reputation. So, you know, it's an issue. It is a very big issue, and one that I am very just disappointed. Just really disappointed. I feel for these players being put in this position, and I mean, can you imagine like if Shenyi was brought over partially due to this, or Kaiduo, or whoever? Um, it's it's a problem, to say the least. So I don't know. I'm very, I don't know. I'm sad. I'm really sad. So hopefully they'll figure out rest of this, and hopefully they'll be able to get everybody the money that they're owed and everything. Hopefully. Moving on. The last bit here. TSM have redone their website. I don't know. It seems cool. Just kind of roaming around it. I mean, the shop still goes to its own thing. And it's cool that they show the history dating all the way back to the founding of the company, which was really, really cool to see. I don't know. It's a cool update. It definitely, I like the fact that it exemplifies the other teams, not just the LCS team, which I think is always important, and all the other stuff that they have going on at TSM. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think it's cool. I don't think it's, I mean, I'm glad they did something. I mean, they were very behind on a lot of other parts of it, but yeah, I don't know. That's it's cool. It's cool. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I've had like 4 people try to call me right now, so I gotta probably drop off this, and it's about the perfect timing anyway. So I do apologize for a bit of the distractions, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be back. Next week's the 100th episode, so we're gonna do. It'll probably be a longer one. I'm gonna have a couple people on. We're gonna talk about the team heading into the season. We're gonna talk about a couple other things, and then yeah, I mean, I believe, let me check here. So yeah, I believe next week will be the start of our 2 episodes a week again, as there were a couple of you who had reached out to me both individually and on certain platforms that you would like 2 episodes a week. So guess what? You're getting 2 episodes a week. They probably won't all be an hour long like they used to be. I'm probably going to try to shorten them at least to like 30 to 45 minutes. It makes it a little easier to do the quick edits that I need to, and some other areas, other aspects that I need to do. But no, this is great. I'm excited. We're through the off season. MSI is over, and now we get to watch Maple come in and hopefully bring this team back to prominence. So I look forward to it. If you like the show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss another episode. Please continue to make this the number 1 TSM LCS podcast out there. I know there's some other ones that are potentially in the works. I've talked to a couple other people, and they seem to be doing some cool stuff. So hopefully that'll all come out here very, very shortly. Please share this with your friends. You can find the official tweets either on my Twitter account at TGHRobertHaynes or the Gamehouse's at TGHEsports. Lastly, head to thegamehouse.com. We'll have a lot more content coming out, not only about TSM, but the LCS in general. And with that, thanks for tuning in. The show comes out, well, for the last time this offseason, every Monday. Next week, every Monday and Thursday, and is exclusively for your TSM earholes. I'm Robert Haynes, and this has been Talking TSM. I'll see you all next week.